You're listening to Art Affairs, episode 91. Today I'll be talking to DALeast. Alright, so my name is Michael Faith, and this is Art Affairs. Art Affairs is my attempt at shining a spotlight on the many wonderful people that make up this amazing art community, featuring conversations with artists, gallerists, curators, telling their stories. You can dig through previous episodes, complete with show notes, at artaffairs.podcast.com, but the best way to stay plugged in is to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're really enjoying the show and want to help support what I'm doing here in an even bigger way, check out the Art Affairs Patreon. Not only does it give you an opportunity to help keep the show going, but there are several community-oriented benefits as well, like getting early access to episodes and suggesting questions for upcoming guests. You can find all the information about that at patreon.com/artaffairs. You can also connect with the show on Instagram at Art Affairs Podcast. All right, so today's guest is artist DALeast. Dal is an internationally renowned artist most well known for the incredible paintings of animals that he creates in public spaces. We talk about how he first got started painting in the streets of his hometown in China, the meaning behind his super unique and immediately recognizable metal rod motif, his last show in Nepal, what he's been up to lately, and a whole lot more. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with DALeast. Dal, welcome to the show, man. It's so good to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And so, like I do with everybody, I like to dive into your background a little bit. And I know that you were born and grew up in Wuhan, China, which just looking up at like statistics on Google is the 7th largest city in China. Very large city on the Yangtze River. Being such an urban area, were you living like in the heart of the city, or were you more outside in like some of the rural areas?
I grew up, I think, all over the city because my mom, she loved to move around. So I think I lived in many different places in the city when I grew up.
Okay, and what was your mom doing? Did she anything artistic or?
Not really, but she's kind open-minded, so that's how I became an artist, I think, because of her. She just let me do whatever I like, so yeah.
Okay. And do you feel like you thrived in that kind of large urban environment? Do you like living in large cities?
Yeah, I feel like a pretty much a city person, but then somehow that's how I grew up, I think. And then I lived in Beijing after Wuhan, for 2 years. And then I moved to South Africa. Then I started to really appreciate nature because I feel like that's what we really need. That's very important for us as a human. Yeah, of course, city life is very convenient. You can get whatever you want and go out and this and that. But if we don't have a nature around, then we miss something inside, or like something that's really essential for us as a living being. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that your mom was really open-minded, and that's maybe how you kind of got interested in embracing your own creativity. Did you have much exposure to arts as a kid? Is it something that you feel like you had around you a lot?
Yeah, all the time, I think. I guess I remember the first time I started to make something when I was 3 or 4 years old, I guess. I just got this book of making a paper thing. You can fold the paper and create certain things. And my mom gave me the book, and then I started to do that. And then she's like, "Oh, maybe you should draw." And so then afterwards, that just become a play, I think, like a toy. So that's been my I can't say practice, but something I like to do.
Yeah. So you mentioned as you were growing up that it was something you did as play, but did you were you already starting to think about it as a possible career path for you, like something you might want to do as an adult?
Yeah, actually, I did. I did tell my mom when I was 6. I remember. I didn't remember, but I remember my mom told me afterwards, many years later. She was like, that's like when I started really traveling and doing my work. She was like, remember when you were like 6, one day you were drawing, and then suddenly you turned to me and said, "Hey, Mom, I'm gonna travel the world and become an artist when I'm older."
Was she like supportive of that?
Yeah, she was quite surprised. Like, "Wow, you're so little. How come you think of like that?" And then she was like, "Oh, now you're doing it. It's great."
Amazing.
When she was telling me, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you ultimately went to school at the Hubei Institute of Fine Arts in Wuhan. What attracted you to that school specifically? Was it just because it was close by, or was there something in particular about the school that you wanted to be a part of?
So like when I grew up, the way I approach art is like a play, as I said. So in the beginning, I just, like play around by myself. I try different mediums and different methods and all that stuff. And then I also follow different art teachers in the primary school, middle school, and high school, like different time with different other like teacher for different private class or like art class and stuff. And I studied art more intensively in high school because I am to maybe I should study something more serious in fine art, institute. So then I had ideas that I want to learn sculpture. So that's kind of my my plan that if I can do that would be great. That's what I was thinking. So then I somehow get accepted into this college, but I dropped out when I was almost finished, like supposedly in 5 years, but I dropped out in the 4th year.
Wow. And so, like, why sculpture in particular? Did you have, like, was it what you were passionate about at the time? Were you really excited about sculpture, or did you just choose sculpture because you thought it would be a good career option for you?
Somehow I really loved that form of art. It's kind of very impressive for me. And I really like shapes, space, and dimensions, depth. So I feel like I feel I'm more sensitive towards shapes and forms than colors.
Okay.
Now I love color more, but at that time I feel like I really I was drawn into like sculptures somehow. And also this one's really hard to get in China, like to study that. So I feel like if I can really study that, then some other things I can maybe it's easier than, if I learn this, then other things will be easier. So that's, yeah.
And then you left, and then you had like 1 year left. You were almost done, and then you took off. So like, what motivated that pivot? Why did you ultimately decide to leave the art program?
There were like 2 reasons, I guess. One reason is that I really appreciate the way they teach, but for me, my personal approach, I feel it's kind of very technical. It's like a really like you have to do exactly the same way of how the class is like telling you to do. And it's not much of like, of course we are learning, so we have to like learn the skills. It's very important for making especially realistic artworks and sculptures. But the thing is, I feel like I should have more of like development of how the creativity should be like there. It's also very important. I feel these two should be half and half, because too much technique, your creativity will go into a box. Then you can't think out of the box. But too much creativity ideas, then your hand is limited. You can't make it happen. This is also not good. So if we have the both, then it's like two wheels we can ride on, then we can make things happen. So I feel like it's kind of imbalanced, and then I was kind of wild also, like in my head. And then this leads to a second reason, because I was actually doing graffiti since the first year I entered the college, and then I met my graffiti crew. Like one of my classmates, he asked me to join them. So then we started doing a lot of work actually on the street, in the public space, more than in the classroom. So I feel like I studied like graffiti or mural painting or public art at the same time with a sculpture major. So that's like my two studies in the college, I think.
Well, and also, I mean, I guess if you had discovered this this medium of expression like street art or graffiti that you were really passionate about, and then having to do schoolwork that you weren't as passionate about, I could see how that might create a disconnect between those things, the things that you're focused on in school that you kind of have to do, and the work that you really are passionate about doing. Do you think that I mean, so that disconnect ultimately contributed to your decision to leave? And
yeah, kind of. But the interesting thing is, like, I feel somehow, because I was doing graffiti in college time only, and then after that, I was actually doing more of like not as same like graffiti, but I use the same space, same material, doing something different. It's more like painting, like a mural painting. I see it that way because the essence is different, even though we share similar elements. And at the same time, my imagery is pretty much influenced by my study of sculpture, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah. So these two actually combined after I left the college. These two combined and made me doing the work I was doing afterwards.
Interesting. And so you mentioned the graffiti crew that you joined up with. I believe it was JEJ, one of the first generation graffiti crews in China, which I think it's not like, it's easy to not fully appreciate the fact that being the first to do a thing, you didn't have examples to follow. Like, you know, the handful of artists whom I've had on that have done work in the streets were often inspired by the work that came before them, or that were being done by their peers. But you guys were like an OG crew in China, setting the example for everyone else. So like, tell me about that. Like, I guess what originally inspired that idea to do work in public spaces when there wasn't really a big history of that before?
Yeah, because like, I mean, China is not really, the graffiti history is not really like what happened in the US or in Europe. But there are people who got influenced by this, you know, subculture. So we had people doing that there, but was really small amount of people. And then that time when we were doing it was kind of like the first, like what you said, like first generation. And our crew was pretty much very productive. So we did a lot of work together for like 4 years. Like we have 5 people in the crew. And we're actually from same like college, so it's pretty much easy for us to meet together every day, hang out, and do our work together. It's kind of like it was really fun. I had a great time, one of the best time of my life, and they are so amazing, all of them, really funny. Nice. And very great energy. So, and that time is not really much happening, so somehow there's a lot of obstacles for sure because of that, but same time there's a lot of opportunities also because of that.
And what was like the city's stance on graffiti? Was it something that they pursued like aggressively? Did you guys had to avoid getting like caught by the police and stuff?
So not really, but the funny thing is, okay, so I don't know if you know the history of graffiti. I'm sure you heard about it. Like, come from like the history of graffiti in the US and in Europe. So there's graffiti, right? There's also vandalism. So they come together, but somehow they're not really like they can go separate ways. So some artists pretty much focus on the imageries development, and some artists focus on the actions. Let's say windows. They like pretty much just, you know, against the mainstream of whatever the system is. But some artists just want the motivations to let people know them. So they develop the design of the names into different styles. And that's why we can see a lot of styles in graffiti. But in China, it's not really the case, actually. Because when graffiti came to China, there's already a lot of styles, you know. And then in China, we don't have this idea of how to against the system, really, not really. Because, you know, it's not something we want to do or like something we need to do also sometimes, because we kind of have different understanding. But the younger generation is much better, I guess, because of the internet. But there's sometimes just very mellow kind of, you know, the life. It's not like we have to do something like outrageous. So it's pretty much only, I guess, based on the development of imagery. I guess so graffiti. If you're a graffiti writer, it's very important of your tag, your names. You have to make it your own style. So I think that's the one thing our crew pretty much focus on, and how to do big murals. And then also same time we're like kind of softly doing the second one too. Slowly. So in the beginning we're like, oh, let's do this wall, but then we got so many, like, you know, people like shout at us on the street and all that stuff, but it was like, oh, we don't care. And then, you know, we keep going. So after we did 1, 2, 3, then the whole neighborhood was like, oh, they're actually doing some stuff, not just some naughty kids, you know. So then they start to invite us to paint their walls.
Wow. And
then that's very interesting in China. It's different. So we got like some walls that we don't need to fight for afterwards. And then after that we get some other things. We have more money to get materials. In the beginning it was really difficult. We have to save up and all that. But then halfway through we're pretty easy, and we get to travel in China, in different cities, and do different kind of projects and festivals and stuff. It was pretty fun that time.
It's amazing how that like transformed from something that was just you guys doing it under the cover of night, or, you know, kind of fighting against the system, and then it developed into something that people embraced and the community asked you to do.
Yeah, because people don't really know what it is actually. It's not a start from like beginning and then developed and then, but actually in the whole world, graffiti system is just in the end it become this own game, because you can see the after the style developed, the new style and all that wild style, like people can't really read what it is, but the graffiti writers, they can read it from each other. Then it become the inside game. It's quite funny because in the beginning we want the public to know us, but then after it's too complicated and become so it's kind of funny thing what happened. But also I feel like, of course now still there's some people still doing it, but it's actually, I don't know if I'm the person to say this, but it's much less now. I don't know what's happening. So after that, graffiti changed. Somehow not changed, but there's another stream. There's so many streams come out from one art form, right? Or one art movement. So there's another stream came out right after, I mean, even before a little bit, but mostly I think after I dropped out, it was like so-called street art afterwards. Even though I don't really like the term street art, it's really limiting. I think street is like a location, it's not like art form. But that's how people call it, I guess, because it's a subculture. It's not like, you know, well, we have mural art like 1,000 years ago. But different thing is, I feel street is a label for public space that developed in this new era because of internet.
Sure.
Because we have two kind of street. One is on the physical street, and then another is actually online. Because most people don't really see the work on the street,
right?
Physically, they see it even before the art is finished. They can see the videos, the stories, the somebody painting it, you know. then more people actually get to see it on the small screen, even though you can't really see it as how you see it on the street. That's really interesting, actually. You only can see a little bit. And that's actually really limiting the quality of the art. But this media really helped the art to pass on like spirit around the whole globe. So yeah, that's what we got now.
No, it is interesting to kind of distinguish between the street that is your Instagram feed or whatever social media you're choosing to use, and then the actual like street of public. I mean, they're both like venues of public exchange, but with different qualities, I guess, and one maybe contributing to the other. And so that's interesting. So was it after you left school that you moved to Beijing? Was that the point where you moved there?
Yeah, I thought, maybe I want to do like fine art and all that. So maybe I should go to Beijing. Beijing is kind of like, a lot of artists, and there's a good environment there. But yeah, like any of the emerging artists, I was just, being a free spirit and don't know what's going on.
So did you jump like right into your practice, like your art practice, once you moved to Beijing, or were you doing other kinds of work at the same time to like pay the bills?
Yeah, both. I mean, mostly I guess pay the bill, and then also if I have a time, I can do other stuff. I also tried. Well, actually, before that, me and my graffiti crew members, like 3 of us, MCG and Fox, that's the name, and me. We actually did a 1-year experimental like collective called a Trip. So we did like public work, but not related to painting.
Oh, interesting.
So we did like public installations, and we did some like live performance and video work and all kind of stuff, and did the exhibitions. Yeah, so that's like 1 year of experimental after being just painting, on the walls. And
do you feel that was maybe informed by your experience with sculpture while you were in school, like that multi-dimensional like installation type stuff?
Yeah, and also when I was growing up, like around my teenager time, I tried a lot of different mediums. So I always wanted to do different, like, multiple mediums, not just one type. But painting for me is mostly close to heart. It's more, like an instinct. Because everybody can pick up a pen or something, a rock even, to paint. And that's the first thing as a human that made being creative or some express something that out of him or her onto something others can see, can share. So painting always been there like that. I think that's like a very basic element, a medium. But at the same time, I would like to try different way of expressing my world, let's say, because art is like perception, right? It's like you share your perception, make it into a code, and then you project outside, and people can see that, and they decode it and into their perception. So that's how we share a world with each other. So yeah, so I was like, if I can speak this language and speak that language and this different language, then I can actually do something more interesting. So I did try different things, like video art, like installations, sound, different different medium of painting. And so yeah, I'm still on my journey that I would like to try more, but painting is always the basic things I like to do. Yeah,
that's awesome. It sounds like that's what feels like most at home to you, is when you're painting. So you mentioned that you spent 4-ish years of painting with the graffiti crew, and then you did a year of experimental type art, and then I know in 2008 just before the Beijing Olympics, you guys were arrested. So you mentioned earlier that the police didn't really care too much about what you were doing in the streets, but then in 2008, you were actually arrested. And I think the police thought you were terrorists of some kind because, like, what are you guys doing in, you know, these buildings or whatever? But tell me about that. Like, what happened and how did you get, like, was it for your art or was it for other reasons that you guys got locked up?
Yeah, that's just a misunderstanding, I think, because as we talked about earlier, that in China, people don't really know what's going on. They say, oh, why those kids painting on the street, you know? That time when we were in college, they don't understand, like, what's these? And did somebody hire you? Or, like, what is commission? Or, like, we just paint by yourself? Then that must be crazy. That's how people understand, because nobody does that randomly. And especially nobody go out at night, paint whole night. So once that happened, it's kind of, you know, in graffiti, you have a thing called a bombing, right? Right, yeah. So just go out and cover the street and whatever big screw ups and, or, you know, the bubble, whatever your names and tagging and all that. And then make such a mess. Well, the graffiti writer, the artist, think is like the best thing ever in the world, but other people will think, oh, it's such a mess, and you know. So we did some of that, and it was okay. I think the city is too boring. It's too much gray. We want to contribute some color. You know, we're artists and all that, but some people may not think the same way. And especially, okay, it wasn't the first time we did that. So we did it before, but nothing happened. But that night, because the Olympic game is going to happen in 5 days, they don't want this kind of stuff or something related to sensitivities or like this kind of thing happen to make big news. So then, like, we got to figure it out what's going on with those guys. And so then they found us. And so after a whole day of, like, you know, back and forth and asking questions and all that, then they were like, oh, okay, sorry. We thought you are something else, that we thought you were making trouble and this and that. So now we better let you go because we made a mistake. Right on. Yeah, but they were like, oh, don't tell people because, you know, it's just stupid.
So after that experience, did you guys do more, or did it kind of scare you a little bit? They're like, hey, we don't want to get in trouble anymore, you know? Oh,
actually, that's like the last bit of our college journey. So because, you know, we only had a 4 year together, and I only did the 4 years graffiti, to be honest. But I mean, my spirit is still remaining there, but the actions wasn't the same anymore. So after that, like, everybody has their own directions, and we're not, you know, in the same place. So yeah, then that was finished. So that's the end of that. Like, interesting. Like that year, you know, was the end of that.
And so then just a couple of years later, in 2010, you moved to South Africa, where you lived for, I think, 5-ish years. Was that experience, like, what was that experience like in terms of cultural shift? You had, up until that point, lived your entire life in China and in different cities in China. And then now you're living in South Africa, which, like you said earlier, you were saying earlier, the nature is like ever present and just culturally different from Beijing. So was that like, how was that transition for you? Was it difficult to adjust?
Well, it's very different. It's totally different. So many different things. And it's kind of like you shift into a different life, you know? The environment's different. The way of living is different. The food is different. The language is different. And I was pretty lucky because I was with my ex, you know, Phase 47. She's an artist too, amazing artist, amazing human being. So we were together. That's why I moved there. That time, that made it much easier to adjust for me because of her. And otherwise, other things are quite. Yeah, it's kind of like it took me some time to get used to it. But after a few years, I really started to appreciate. I learned and how do you say, nurtured from nature. It's such a big, like, wow. Like Cape Town is like a mother city, you know? They call it mother city. They say it like that. And it really has the mother energy. So I really feel that when I was there. And yeah, it gave me a lot of imprints of how I think about life and how I think about reality and how I relate to this earth and the people and environment. That's why my work start from then. It pretty much shift. I use a lot of animal as my concept, can I say, or theme. But I use it as like more like my own way to create animals. It was like a man-made. Man-made. It's kind of run down. It's like machinery, and it's artificial. But they based on animals which is from the nature. So it's kind of a put these two together is very. I mean, if I had a dream like that, I feel like, oh wow, what's going on? You know. But then I feel like that's how it is right now. Like everything like that. So what I did was pretty much reflecting what we have been going through, and then also how my own life. Like I from a city, I from like very modern setting and all that. And then I live in South Africa, which is really a nature world, and it's so beautiful there. So yeah, it's very, very interesting the way of how this come together, and they influenced me and my work.
So was it your time in South Africa that motivated the focus on animals? Because obviously, you know, animals have been, and the natural world in general has been a huge presence in your work. Did that all start with your time in South Africa?
So like before that, I painted more of, let's say, graffitis. So this is my name, right? Pretty much changed from my name, but it's become more abstract. So right before South Africa, my painting was kind of abstract, but I started painting my new style when I was still in China. And then when I moved to Cape Town, and I really feel this strong energy of nature. And so it really changed me. So I'm like, oh, gonna paint this for sure, and use my style that I just developed. So these two come together really well, and also like I feel because urban art, you know, is public art, is in the city where it has most of the people. So where's people, where's like machine, where's city, where's, you know, like market, supermarket, and all that stuff. We don't see anymore there. We don't even see the things that we eat as alive. So I kind of pay tribute to those living beings that we have on this earth, but we don't see them. So I put them in the city when I travel to different places, different countries, and but in a different way. It's not really original look or the animal. It's like we swallow it and we come out from us as a human. So that's like mixed with you know, both, I guess, like artificial animals.
No, it's interesting like that, because I was going to ask you about the like metal bar, like rod motif, and how that may have been informed by your time growing up in such a big industrialized part of the world. Was that maybe the combining of those two? It sounds like it was like a combination of your time in this really large city of Wuhan and then Beijing, and then suddenly being in a very nature-rich part of the world like Cape Town, and almost this being kind of the combination of the marrying of those two experiences.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, pretty much, and come at the right time, you know. Like, yeah. I was actually looking for something different as how I did before that 4 years, and then that was like perfect, you know, like the subject, right? Because I want to do those things. I love animals, but they're part of us. But unfortunately, in this era, we are really losing them. And how many species are dying and all that stuff. So it's kind of like to remember them. So yeah, I try to put them up somehow.
Do the animals in your work, beyond paying tribute to them, do they represent a larger narrative or story that you're trying to tell? Or is it more about just paying homage to these beautiful, creatures?
Yeah, pay homage. And because they are disappearing, and that time I was thinking, we paint humans a thousand of years, and then maybe we should have more animals in our paintings, in our artworks, and we started with that actually in the cave. Then we come back, put them in the place that we don't see them, and so I don't know. And after, I guess many years later, when we look at it, I guess it's making more sense. Perhaps I don't know.
After your time in South Africa, I believe you lived kind of nomadically for a while, for a few years before settling ultimately in Berlin. I guess what motivated the move to Berlin and that period of your life where you were living in a lot of different places?
Yeah, I guess like in different period of time that we have different things. So I guess that chapter was ended in South Africa. So after 5 years. So then I was like, I traveled a lot actually at that time in South Africa. Like for 5 years, I traveled 6 months a year, every year.
Wow.
And the other 6 months in Cape Town in the studio working. So I was working full time the 5 years. I did a lot of work, a lot of shows, a lot of walls and stuff like that, studio work. And so after that, I was like, I need some time to absorb, more stuff, not just taking it out from me, like not just expressing. So I thought maybe I should travel still, because I was about to move out of South Africa. So I was like, where should I go next? And then I thought maybe I should just leave in my suitcase and then see how it goes. So for 2 years, I was traveling nonstop.
Wow.
But the thing is, I spent a lot of time study and meditating, doing retreat and following like a Buddhist tradition, a Tibetan Buddhism, So I spent a lot of time in Himalayas and in India, Nepal, and doing my retreat, and also seeing my teacher, and also doing kind of practice and stuff. And then I actually went off for a year. I didn't do any work. Year and a half, I think I disappeared somehow because I feel I needed it. And like a tree or a flower that's growing, a plant, we need to absorb more nutrition, in order to have flowers come up or grow better. So I feel that was the time that I was doing that. So then I do come back after a year and a half. I did a show in San Francisco, I think. And then I did some mural work here and there. But then actually since then, I've been quite here and there. I wasn't sticking with the same schedule as how I did in that 5 years. Yeah, because I feel like there's something tricked me that I feel like I should go deeper into my being and really develop something that I can truly or fully share with the world. That's why I'm still doing that, So after two years, I feel like, okay, maybe I need settle down a little bit, slow down a little bit. So I was like a wind blowing here and there. So I was like, where should I go? So I had a few places on my list, Berlin was one of them. So I was like, Yeah, Berlin. I love Berlin so much. That city is super cool and had the thing I really everything I like. I love techno and all that stuff, and I have a lot of friends there. I was like, okay, let just go there, you know. So I went. Yeah, yeah. I could have choose other like say. There's a lot of opportunities for me to stay in Bali. Actually, it's like UN places open for me that I can rent. That beautiful place, and or Kathmandu. That time I thought about it, or even I thought of maybe New York. But then I was like, oh, Berlin is the time because I feel like Berlin is changing also. If I don't go, it'll be gone after some years. The Berlin. So yeah, then I was there for 3 years till 2019.
Okay. During that period of travel before you settled in Berlin, where you were focusing on, your internal self and building up your own, not as focused as much on expression so much as absorbing the world around you. Were you still? I mean, you said you took a year and a half off, but were you still able to create at all? I mean, was it difficult, like not having a stable, consistent place to call home, where you were just moving around a lot to be creative?
You mean before Berlin?
Yeah. Before you landed in Berlin, were you still trying to create stuff, or were you just completely focused on just developing your own self?
Yeah, developing. I think 2010 to 2015, when I was in South Africa, that was like completely let me out from my expression, everything. It's kind of really threw a lot of out from me. And then after that, I was like, okay, I feel like I need a bit change, or like I need to absorb more. So that time was totally different. So I went into a state of just sit down and relax more, or maybe not totally relax, but less busy than before, and also really absorb and reflect what I have been through and what I should do next, and or just stay in the moment. I was trying to do that, maybe just stay there in a moment.
That's amazing. I love that you dedicated time to doing that, because so many people don't and get worn down by just constantly being on the move and creating and never really reflecting more internally. So I love that you dedicated so much time to that.
Yeah, because I felt that was needed. If we were centered or we are like right there, then we can do way more things. And the things we produce, we make, or have different aura to it. So I feel that's very important. And I feel like after 5 years of really hard work, I feel kind of little exhausted, not little exhausted. So I feel like, I need a rest and recenter myself. And yeah.
A lot of the time that we talked about the work that you've done in public spaces, but obviously you have a lot of experience creating art for galleries as well. How do you feel that the creative experience between those two differs for you? Do you approach the work that you make in the studio just fundamentally differently than the way that you work out ideas for stuff that you're going to put in the street? Do you treat those separately, or are they kind of just different ways of speaking the same language?
So when my process is like, I really like the question because it's very important. I feel when I paint on the street, I don't actually do any sketch or any plan before I arrive on the spot. So I always try. So sometimes the project, they're like, can you send us some sketch? Then now I feel really bad, but I feel this is reasonable, because I was like, can I just do it after I arrived? A lot of time, like I did that for a reason, because I need to fully feel the space and what is there, like what is the building, like who's in the building, what is it for, and who's the neighbor, and who passed the building, and what's the energy around here, is the center or the edge, or what's the location. So after I got all the information and then stand right in front of the wall. I feel the energy. Then I was like, oh, I feel like maybe this space, this piece need this kind of work. Or let's say if I do animal, I'm like, I should have that. And then I come up with something. So that's very important for the public work in my approach. So in the studio is different. So I do use the similar imageries, but I feel like I have more freedom to do stuff on the canvas. But you know what I do? I still create a base. Let's say like if I do in a public space, my base would be that street, people around it and all that stuff, right? The energy there. But in the studio, if I paint on canvas, I start with the background first. So the way I do background, I use a lot of water, make the color, and then I don't know what's gonna happen on my canvas with the background. So I just let it happen randomly. So after some time, I feel like, oh, I love this pattern. So this is ready to paint on. Then I will start have something on top of that pattern that I created randomly. After perhaps sometimes one background took a month, Well, I painted really fast on the street. Let's say those huge murals, I sometimes were a week.
Oh wow!
Maximum 10 days. Or I did a mountain in Bhutan with like during COVID when COVID just happened. It took the longest time, 21 days. But that was a mountain. Like the King of Bhutan gave me this mountain to paint. It was really hard work. But the other time I did on the street, it was like one week around, 7-8 days. But in the studio, sometimes took like more than a month to just make a background. Because sometimes I don't feel it's ready, so I just let it be and do more, many layers, until one day I'm like, okay, now I can do something on it. Then I find something suitable for that, the arrangement.
Interesting. So like the studio, like the way in which you approach the substrate or the background that you're developing the idea on top of is sort of embracing the randomness, I guess, of the world and allowing randomness to come into your practice and then developing the idea on top of whatever that became. I think that's interesting, and it's cool to parallel that between the environment that you paint on in the streets, which are also not under your control. You're kind of removing some of your control from that background element, and then injecting your ideas on top of it. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I guess it's the very similar approach is see what is there and then do something.
Yeah.
Because the way I paint, there's one thing I didn't mention about the mural painting, the wall. So usually I choose the dirty wall. Like when organizers say, hey, what kind of wall do you like? I say, oh, if you can find like dirty old wall, would be amazing. Because those wall has a history. There's pattern there and there's energy there. So you can feel the time. So it's kind of like collaboration with the wall itself and with the time itself. And then also my painting, you can actually, it's not like solid, right? There's a gap in between. So the background can see through, like can come out with the painting. So I brought that into my studio practice, and similar. I guess that's the way that can share with outdoor and indoor space.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So like once you have that background worked out and you're happy with what that has become and you start working on the painting, how do you develop the idea further? Do you still do sketches on the side of what you want to paint, or do you just jump right into painting on top of that background?
Most time actually directly. So one thing is like I used to, still now, like I do use reference, and a lot of modern artists, they use references, paint photographs, right? Or like a reference you can find here and there, because we are children of internet.
Yeah.
So we can find all kind of stuff. That's like advantage we have, but also maybe it's a downfall because we have less of, I don't know. But anyways, so I do use photographs sometimes I can find, and then I change them. That's my reference or like my inspiration, but I don't, of course, paint the same thing. But the thing is, if I transform them, I go straight because pretty much I trust in directness. First thought, best thought, as some master says. So if I do sketch and then I do it again with canvas, well, sometimes it works really well, but I really like the way of no rehearsal. Just go straight because that's the real you, like more genuine or like more direct, even though sometimes that looks as good as how put a lot of makeup on, but that's actually the real, like,
Yeah.
So yeah, I do that mostly straight on, like, because I feel also like when you see that first time you see something, you're like, oh wow, it's so beautiful. Then I have this expression of that. But then after some time you see too much, maybe it's like, oh, I see it differently now. So the freshness is not there. So I want to catch that into my paintings.
Interesting. I love that. And do you do the same thing when you're painting on the street? Obviously, you don't do any prep work before you get there because you want to experience the environment and the community and the wall and get that energy to inform the work that you do. But at the point where you do that, do you do any kind of preparation or do you just jump right into painting on the wall?
Same.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what I shared also. That's what I shared also with my studio work. I mean, that's actually come from first I do big murals. I don't do sketch sometimes. That's kind of crazy. I don't know, but some people say, hey, if you don't do sketch, what if you do make mistake? So I was like, oh, actually, I feel the whole painting is a big mistake. So it doesn't matter anymore.
No, that's awesome. So like the ability to embrace both the random and the moment, like living in that moment and embracing whatever that is, I think is impressive. Just the freedom to do that is cool.
But sometimes I do sketch or study it just for itself. Like that study itself. It's not like I make study for a big piece. I do that sometimes, time to time, but that's not my regular approach. Yeah.
For the work that you make in other people's, communities, you're going to these other cities and you're doing work in communities that you don't live in yourself, but other people live in. What impact, I guess, are you hoping to make on the people in these communities that you paint in? Like, what do you hope they take away from the work that you make?
Yeah, that's very important because that's people who are gonna see the work. So it's very amazing to have the opportunity to paint in the public space, and because a lot of people are gonna see it. It's not like in a museum or like there's some building that you have to go. It's quite surprising that people can just walk on the street and one day, somehow by chance, not looking at the cell phone, they look up. They can see something different than just a small glass, mirror screen. And it's really nice. I like the feeling of that, to provide this kind of scene. So people would like, oh, wow, what is this, Yeah, and if people can stop the steps and just standing there, look for a few seconds even, that's really such great honor, because that's really precious moment that you share something with random people that you never even have chance to meet in this universe. But then somehow certain time you put the work there and then they pass by in the period of that work still exist on that location, on that wall, then they have this connection with the work. It's very precious thing. It's so beautiful, I think. So that's one thing I really love public art. But yeah, of course, I don't get a chance to meet everybody who has seen my work or who know my work. Like I don't get a chance to talk to everyone. But people, I feel like they've been really kind and nice, you know. Yeah, I don't know. Even I guess even they don't like it, they say they like it. Or and also the internet is like I'm really bad with posting my work and posting on Instagram. I have so much work unposted, but yeah, I feel really bad actually to the people who like my work because I'm so like not really on top of that. But I will try to do better. But that's another public space that we can share with people.
Right.
But somehow I do prefer more of the first one, the public space of the street, because as we said in the beginning, like the internet do help this pass through to the public, right? This non-physical public space, but then we have limitation of only see this much. That's the painting we see. So so let's say we have the idea of big and small, even though this is a delusion, big and small, doesn't exist, but we have as a human. So if we see something bigger than us, way bigger, this really can be very impressive or could be very threatening, no? So that's very different when we see this thing like, very small, hand.
Yeah, I mean, it has a completely different impact on you, like just the impressiveness of, the scale, exactly. It doesn't, and also it's harder to connect, like, if part of the experience of painting in another community is to connect with that community and the people of that community, it's hard to get that same impact from an Instagram post or something on your screen,
Yeah, it's really feel different. See it one big wall in front of us, or see it on a phone. Yeah, really. So it's like you face somebody face to face and touch a person, or you have a video call with a person. It's kind of like, it's not a really good example, but we can kind of feel that way somehow. I think it's different like that, because also the work carries energy too. That's why we walk into secondhand vintage store. There's something we feel, right? Because those objects carries energy, it's there. So wall is definitely like water carries energy, paint, Mm-hmm. So if the work is there, we only can perceive certain amount of things in our ability as a human in this body. So there's a lot of things we can't see by this eye, by this touch, but somehow those things maybe is there, but we can't just perceive. So I think the screen is making it less perceivable. Only an image. It's not even energy. So somehow, I'm very old school in this way. I feel like it's nice to go see the wall in person. I think if there's a wall.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree, and if I feel like anybody that lives in a city where you've done work would appreciate the scale and the impressive nature of it when they encounter it in person. So if anybody's listening and lives in one of the cities where you've done work in, I'm sure that they would resonate with that.
I hope so. But another thing also very interesting compared to these two, physical space and the picture or digital space. Physical space lasts shorter. The digital space lasts longer. Because most of my work, I think, is not there anymore. But then we have photo. So yeah, there's both sides, I guess.
Pros and cons. How do you feel about the ephemeral nature of the work that you create in public spaces? Do you find that aspect of it attractive because it's fleeting, or is it something that you don't like and you wish it would last longer?
Of course, as an artist, you hope that the work will last forever, right? But then we know the reality is not forever, and then everything is like impermanent, right? So nothing really lasts, and then that's the beauty of it, I think. Let's say the sakura blossom in Japan, why so many people go see it? Because it's really in a short amount of time. If it's happening all whole year, I don't know. Like people just like pass by it, don't even look at it, you know. So I think that's like a beauty of something doesn't last, but at the same time is a sadness. But who knows? Sadness is a beauty too, I think.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Actually, recently I did a show. I participated a show in Kathmandu, and by this place called Lichavi House. It's still building actually. It's like a new center by a place called Bouldernath. And so we did a few shows already, like 2 shows. Lichavi House arranged a few shows, and then this one of them that the first one actually. This is like a series of shows, and this first one called Anicca. It's a Sanskrit word actually, but the meaning is impermanent. So I did a painting in there that I already know is gonna be gone after a week of showing. So the show lasts for a week, and then the idea is impermanence, right? That's the theme. So this because they're building, the whole building is under construction. So when it's finished, the work will be covered by a layer of paint. I don't know now. I haven't looked at it, so that's why I didn't even take a photo because I guess I have to be genuinely follow the idea of the show, impermanence, even the photograph, and so I don't know if it's still there or not. But I think after they finish the building, it will be covered up for sure. So that's one thing about working in a public space that I learned to face the reality that because every time you finish your work, you are traveling and you have to leave. So that's the thing that you have to say goodbye to the work you just put up there after a whole week or 10 days of hard work. And most of the time you love the work. It's like a newborn baby,
Yeah.
But then you have to just let it go. So that's part of the practice, I think. But this is really amazing practice because now I feel like it's easier for me to let go a lot of things in my life. Not like that easy, but it's lasts shorter for me to feel sad. So when something happened, I lost something, then it's not that hard anymore to face it, I guess. So
yeah, I mean, I guess it taught you that lesson of being able to let go, which I think is an important lesson. It's interesting that you found that lesson through your artwork. That's really cool. So shifting gears a little bit, and before we talk about what you've been up to lately, I wanted to chat with you a bit about the show that you did last year in Nepal, titled Spark of a Thousand Dreams. It took place at the Bhutan Museum there in Nepal, where you're living right now. And it seems like that show, along with the mural that you did last year in Sweden for Artscape Festival, it seemed like both of those things saw you exploring some slightly new stylistic themes. Obviously there's still incorporated animals, but rather than having more industrial structures like we talked about earlier, the animals were composed of more natural elements like water or cloud forms. So, tell me about that body of work and that evolution that you kind of explored more recently.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting show because I was teamed up with another artist. Her name is Emily Awari Yoshiko Kuro. She's half Japanese, half Canadian. And she makes beautiful work and is very touching. And it's like you can feel that's from her heart. So we did a show together in the Bhutan Museum. It's also organized by Lichavi House, the one I just mentioned. So that show we try to catch certain fleet moment of our dreams, of someone else's dream, because I believe there was one piece inspired by a friend's dream. So it's pretty much like dream has different layers, I guess, different levels of dream, like dream during sleep, right? Even in the sleep, we'll have different layer of dream sometimes we can have, right? And also this reality can be a dream too. I mean, it's like a dream because impermanence, because everything changing. There's no solid ground, and we don't feel anything solid because yesterday thing has become a memory that no longer exists. So it's like a dream, and we forget things, right? So it's like a dream. When we wake up, we don't remember dream necessarily. Like it's just most of the time we don't remember. So I don't remember what I had yesterday for lunch. Wait, so it's like that. So yeah, so we try to work and try to make work somehow reflect of dreams, and so I used different mediums, and Emily also I get like she also used different mediums to make her work. So from my part, I did like sculpture, film, like a video, which actually photograph, like video photograph kind of thing with the installation, and some paintings and projection, yeah, all different kinds of things. Was really nice because it's in a museum, like Patam Museum. It's kind of like old Newari style. Newari is like kind of one group, very old ancient group of Nepal, like group of people, and then that location is in this old like wooden building, like kind of smallish, and it's quite a long space. So the whole place is also quite dreamy. It's like a tunnel kind of feeling, and we have like 3 floors up, and it's very nice moment. We work with the local people here, and they're really helpful, and all these friends here, and amazing group of people, and the opening was really, really nice too. It's a short show, same as we had here for 1 week.
That's amazing. It seems like both of those, what you were telling me earlier about embracing impermanence and the show being about impermanence, and then the show about dreams, which also has an aspect of impermanence to it. It seems like both of those are kind of exploring that idea of not clinging on to stuff too much, embracing the fact that things in our life are fleeting, and our lives themselves are fleeting, and we need to appreciate the moments that we have, and just embrace those moments and not try to hold on to them too long. I love that idea. And you mentioned the museum is rather old, and I know that it falls under UNESCO's World Heritage Site, so it's a really important place in Nepal. And you mentioned earlier to me just before we started recording that you're living in Nepal now. I guess how long have you been there, and what led you to move to Nepal?
Yeah, Nepal is a very special place, I think. I feel like I have kind of strong connection with this place. Most inspiring is how the people are here. They are really like very special. They always very sweet and nice, and never get angry. And no matter what condition they have in life, they're always very like relaxed. That's really inspired me. So and also this is so beautiful here. Like when you come to Nepal, it feels like time travel. It's like a really ancient vibe. Even there's like, I feel there's a filter, right in front of your eye, different color. So yeah, it's a really fascinating place. And all this, it's kind of live in a museum actually in the city, Kathmandu, because all this, let's say Patam Museum you just mentioned, like really, that's actually in the palace, old palace. That's where the whole, like where the king lives, and all these houses are 1,000 years old. All these temples, 1,000 years old, and also like all the ornament, the building has like these wooden sculptures and statues. They are like a museum piece, like 1,000 years old. So just there, people hanging out, lovers sitting there chatting, and people having tea around. It's just really natural in a way that they live like this. So it's really fascinating me, especially in this, modern time. Even though here is not as like convenient sometimes, certain things as how other places, but I really love it because that's the beauty of it, I think. And also I'm studying here, practice here. My spiritual path, is based here, like Buddhism. So I got a lot of inspirations from the people here, a lot of Tibetan here, and Nepali, and also like really inspired the way they live and the way they pass time, like the so-called pastime. Like they don't get distracted, and they don't, put by different things. So there's a lot of things going on, like I can learn. And the energy here also is very different. It's also higher a little bit. It's by Himalaya region. I always joke with my friend who's not here. I say, here's like a different dimension, There's a 0.5 dimension different.
That's amazing. It sounds like a beautiful place to live. Do you think you'll stay there? Is that home now?
So far, yeah. I have no plan yet, or if I like to live somewhere else. So yeah, I try to be here as long as I can and see what happens, because this, like they always say, it's like old saying. My mom used to always say, it's like, how to say in English? The plan is always slower than the changes. So yeah, of course I want to stay here, but let's see what happens.
Awesome. So, what's been your main focus in 2024, and do you have anything coming up that you'd want to put on people's radars or share with the community?
I'll try to get back to more my work, my art, because I know I've been very quiet and all that, and my people who knows my work also see that, and they are actually very patient. They know what I'm up to. So I always say I'm actually working inside me. Doesn't mean that I have to put something out there, And also I always say, like, as an artist, I think it's not necessary that you have to make piece of art as artist. You can live as artist, or the life is like art. So, but of course, there's a bridge in between me and other people's sharing. In that sense, I would love to make more art to share with people. So that's what I been trying to come up with, like come back to more creativities, like to make more things that me and other people can communicate.
Very cool. And is there any people that want to follow, what you got coming up next? What's the best way for them to stay up to date? Is it your Instagram? Is it your website?
I guess I will post more. I mean, like I was really bad. I have to say, I post my new work like 1 year after. I still have a lot of work I haven't posted, but I am planning to post more. So I think I will update more on my Instagram if people can follow that, or my website too. I think, both.
Awesome. Very cool. So last question, and I like to ask everybody this. Who is one artist that you'd like to see me have on the show?
Wow. Of course, I have a name in my head right after you asked the question. His name is Kinze Nobu.
Oh, okay, nice.
He has another name, Zongsa Jamyang Kinze. He's like amazing artist in many senses. He's a filmmaker. He also paint, draw, and he's my main inspiration, a big inspiration, and on many levels, not just for art, for life too. And he's an artist in the sense of making the reality as art. So, yeah, for me, he's like, wow, like a sun, like a mountain. So, when you look up into somebody, you're like, oh my God, would he even, I don't know. I just my think out loud. So anyways.
Awesome. Well, I will do my best. Great suggestion. I appreciate it. And Dal, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been my honor to chat with you, because it's also clear up some of my thread, It's good to talk sometimes, and to clear up something in my head also. That's great. And thank you so much for having me. And yeah. Have a great time. Talk to you.
So that's it for this episode of Art Affairs. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Dal. I really enjoyed talking with him about the idea behind the work that he creates. After discovering a love of animals and the natural world from his time in Cape Town, he strived to bring animals into large urban centers that don't often have the opportunity to see them. But rather than painting the animals just as they are, he constructs them out of man-made industrial parts. These animals were quite literally the merging of his upbringing in super-urban Wuhan, combined with his years in nature-rich South Africa. It was also really interesting to talk with him about the different chapters of his life and his career. How his time in South Africa, this extremely different cultural experience than what he knew from growing up in a highly industrial part of China. And it was there in South Africa where he discovered and defined his unique artistic voice, creating a style that is so immediately recognizable and reflective of the blending of his own experiences. But it also sounds like it was a very draining time, one in which he worked nonstop, traveled 6 months out of the year, and just constantly gave so much of himself through his creative expression. But once that chapter closed, he was very intentional about reinvesting in himself and allowing himself the time and space to reflect and take in rather than constantly putting out. I was happy to hear he gave himself that time to recharge and seek personal growth in that way. It's so easy to get caught up in the rat race and just constantly do, and, never slowing down to appreciate the moment that you're in. Basking in that moment, reflecting in it. It's great that he took the time to do that. It sounds like he's ready to start exploring new ideas and harvesting some of that inspiration that he's been building for the last few years. Be sure to follow his Instagram to see what comes of that. So thanks again to Dal for joining me today, and thank you for checking out the show. I'm truly grateful for your support. And just a reminder, one big way you could help out if you're really enjoying the show would be to check out the show's Patreon. You can find all the details on patreon.com/artaffairs. And as always, you can contact me through my website at artaffairs.podcast.com or on Instagram at artaffairs.podcast. So until next time, be good to yourself and be good to each other.